The 1960s was a very tumultuous time because of the many struggles that provoked protests such as Cold War conflicts and the rights movement. Additionally, a new generation of feminists were spreading across America, who were following the example of women who had fought for their right to vote. This revolution is now referred to as second-wave feminism. The art world became very political as common protesters were using art to make their views known.
Later, in the 80s, these conflicts were cooling off, but discrimination of minorities still ran rampant throughout many institutions, including the art world. However, the prominent art collectors and distributors responsible for the discrimination were managing to sweep it under the rug. Therefore, in 1985, a group of women in New York who called themselves the Guerrilla Girls decided to take a stand against discrimination in the art world by using guerrilla art or street art and humor to raise awareness about the issues.
At a survey exhibition of painting and sculpture at the Museum of Modern Art in 1984, less than 10% of the 165 artists featured at the exhibit were minorities. A group of women saw this as a call to action and began a picket line outside of the museum, but the passers-by ignored them. The group decided that they needed to bring attention to this disparity, which could be found throughout the art world, so the Guerrilla Girls emerged.
They started by putting up posters in public that gave shocking statistics about the amount of women and minorities featured in various art exhibits. The Guerrilla Girls' intention was to embarrass those guilty of discrimination. One of their first posters showed a list of people who participated in galleries that showed no more than 10% of women artists. Another listed the amount of women exhibits included in certain art museums. As stated by one of the women of the group, they wanted to play with the fear of guerrilla warfare, to make people afraid of who we might be and where we would strike next. This idea inspired the name Guerrilla Girls. They wore gorilla masks to conceal their identities and took on pseudonyms of famous female artists. For example, one of the girls called herself Frida Kahlo, a Mexican painter known for her self-portraits.
First we were guerrillas, freedom fighters, guerrillas, and then we got some press requests and we wanted to have our pictures, but we were anonymous, we wanted to hide ourselves. So one of our early members was a really bad speller, and we were sitting at a meeting one day, and she spelled guerrilla, gorilla, and it was like, wow, that's it.
Oh, so originally it was gorilla, like gorilla fighter,
Guerrilla.
and then she misspelled it like the animal,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
and you just went with it?
Well, it was a message from heaven.
Over time, they learned to incorporate humor into their posters. One girl, known as Frida Kahlo, commented on why the group chose to do this.
That the more we laughed and made fun of the art world, the better we felt. Because at that time, I think a lot of women and a lot of artists of color were taking their situation personally, not realizing that there was a systemic problem.
An example of this technique in use is when they published their poster, The Advantages of Being a Woman Artist.
Working without the pressure of success, knowing your career might pick up after you're 80, seeing your ideas live on in the work of others, not having to choke on those big cigars or paint in Italian suits, being included in revised versions of art history, getting your picture in the art magazines wearing a gorilla suit.
The Guerrilla Girls posters often called out galleries and collectors that were guilty of discrimination against minorities. Those targeted by the posters reacted by criticizing the group with many hurtful names, such as talentless and careerist victims. The group also faced backlash for the name that they had chosen for themselves. Many people thought the use of girls in their name was sexist and hypocritical of their cause, but the Guerrilla girl Frida Kahlo once said,
"Calling a grown woman a girl can imply she's not complete, mature, or grown up, but we decided to reclaim the word girl so it couldn't be used against us. Gay activists did the same thing with the epithet queer."
Despite the initial denunciation, the Guerrilla Girls soon gained supporters, including the New York Times critic Roberta Smith. Originally, the girls called her out for not writing more articles on women, but nevertheless, Roberta wrote many positive articles on the group. Roberta once wrote, "The Guerrilla Girls are not art critics, they're social critics."
The Guerrilla Girls campaigns were simple but effective. The group was among the most prominent when it came to incorporating data into their artwork, which led to a surge of notoriety. The group collected data themselves, such as for one of their most popular pieces, How Women Get Maximum Exposure in Art Museums. They collected the data for the poster by going to the Metropolitan Museum with notebooks. They counted the amount of female artists and the amount of naked bodies. They found that while 5% of the artists were women, 85% of the nudes were female. They incorporated this data into their artwork, standing up to the discrimination with irrefutable data and causing civilians to become aware of the prejudice.
The girls also used letter writing campaigns as a tactic to raise awareness and fight back those guilty of discrimination. The Guerrilla Girl Rosalba Carriera explained this. We send secret letters to egregious offenders, often honoring them with bogus awards. We gave John Russell of the New York Times an award for the most patronizing art review of 1986, when he reviewed Dorothy Dinner's show and called her Mrs. David Smith, referring to her famous sculptor husband.
Due to the Guerrilla Girls' growing popularity, they started taking on new issues with their artwork. They began campaigning for representation of people of color and the LGBT community as well. Their posters began to reference issues outside of the art world such as abortion rights, rape, and the state of the homeless.
Well, we are artists, so we started out in the art world, but very quickly, what we did was invent this way of using facts and humor to twist an issue around and present it in a different way that might change people's minds. So we have spread out to politics, film.
Because they were more popular, they were open to even more criticism. For instance, when they introduced their quarterly newsletter, Hot Flashes from the Guerrilla Girls, some menopausal women felt they were being made fun of. They defended themselves by saying the newsletter was named by a girl who was menopausal herself. Then they received even more hate for the same newsletter. A male journalist went as far as threatening to sue the Guerrilla Girls because they made the subscription charge to Hot Flashes higher for white males than women and people of color. The Guerrilla Girl called Kathy Kollwitz responded, "We thought it was fair because white men earn more. We told him to go sue hairdressers who charge women more for a haircut."
Although the group has faced many obstacles in their pursuit of equality, it cannot be denied that some change has been made. They brought the discrimination of minorities in the art world to the forefront so that it cannot be ignored or dismissed out of hand. In response, countless female artists have taken a stand with them. Important figures leading the art scene have realized that there is a need for more inclusion. The Whitney's curator for prints, David Keel, states that much due to the Guerrilla Girls' influence on the art world, art directors and curators go out of their way to make sure minorities are included in exhibits and galleries. The Guerrilla Girls have also influenced a change in gender expectations in the art world. The Guerrilla Girls' fight has led to a generation of female arts leaders. Not only are women being more included in exhibits, but some women are running influential art institutions, such as the Studio Museum in Harlem, the Cordell Institute of Art in London, and the Hammer Museum in Los Angeles.
The direct impact of the Guerrilla Girls on big art museums is questionable though, as you can see in their recent posters. Although many galleries have nearly equal distribution of minorities, the amount of single or two-person shows in places such as the Guggenheim or the Whitney are usually all male, and certain galleries still include less than 20% of female artists. Thankfully, the Guerrilla Girls haven't given up their fight yet.
The group is still active today and just celebrated their 30th birthday in 2015. Despite fighting oppressors head-on for 30 years, their cause is still needed and their battle is not close to over. Currently, the Guerrilla Girls are spreading their fight beyond American soil and are revisiting a topic they brought to light in 1990. It's even worse in Europe. You can expect to see more from these girls because they show no signs of slowing down anytime soon.